Welcome back, everyone, to the SCC, or the SPL, I guess, World's Wildcards that we're moving forward. A lot of the SCT teams, SOC teams, still trying to vie for that top spot to move forward up against those SPL teams that are waiting for them in a bracket way, way down the road. But as of right now, they still have to make it through. Myself, Goremizer, and Alpha Jackal here on the desk for this one. And Alpha Jackal, we're going to be looking at the next one up. It's Spreed, who we got to see a little bit earlier, and Get a Grip coming into this one, showcasing their debut. Spreed earlier today had what was the longest set I think that we have gotten to see so far this week. It was a 2-1 win, but it took them quite a while to get there. I think it was about 2.5 hours of time, so Hugs and Kisses giving them a long run, but now they get to test their mettle up against Get a Grip.
And I think Get a Grip is going to be a much better matchup for them. Get a Grip, our top seed SML team, and they've completely earned it because they've just time and time again proved why some of these names should be really competing for some of those mid-table SPL spots. They've got the highest amount of kills in the SML by far over on North America, so I'm expecting fast-paced action here from both teams. And Spring, we saw from the game number 3 that they like to take games quickly, so like I said, would favor their playstyle as well.
And for anyone who's just jumping in, maybe missed that first set, Spreed is that team that everyone's kind of had their eyes on in the open circuit because it's Solo Rotrol and Gaijay, right? A lot of players that have otherwise been in that SCC, but you have some really big names, I think, at the forefront, to the point where almost every set, at least when we're talking about it behind the scenes, we'll say it is up to the jungler. If SOT comes through and goes 20-0, then, well, naturally, if your jungler's ever going 20-0, you're expected to win. But if the other jungler on the opposing side, in this case, for Get a Grip, that would end up being, masked. If he's able to match that, or at least suppress that, that's where the win is. And, we look a lot at that jungle matchup.
Yeah, and I think, going back to when Mass was back on an SPL team, it was clear to see that he was one of the more focal points on the team. If he was doing well, the rest of the team was doing well. If he was behind, you could sort of see the struggles of the entire team around it. I don't know if that's due to a bit of morale behind the scenes, something to do with him in comms, but I'm expecting to see them try to get him off to a very fast start here as well.
Yeah, and it is worth noting, Get a Grip, I mean, we want to highlight the jungle because that is where a lot of this effort, I think, is going to be found throughout this game. But Ionic, typically the support for Get a Grip, not going to be playing with them this set or I think this weekend. It will end up being Stuart. Typically a carry playing in the support role for them, something that they had to come in. And so that's another place to look for when you look over to that duo lane is how exactly that matchup's going. Meerkat, as well as Pagon, Masked, and Haddix all have a lot of history behind them. Stewart as well. I mean, we got to see him earlier in the Pro League this year. Even though it was only for one set, he still hopped in and got to play there. But is it going to be enough to displace Gaijay and Blugan, who have that history? That's kind of the question of the day, at least that I have on my mind. And, supports at this point, Alpha Jackal, are pretty significant in the meta. Do you think this is something that could really cause Get a Grip to slip apart?
I mean, if you're going to be looking for a replacement support, if you can't find one that is a support main themselves, the next best thing is to find an ADC, because they're going to be playing with their supports most of the time. They're going to know roughly what to do in the early game. Then once you get to that midpoint of the game and then the late game as well, most of what you need to do will be dictated by where your team is and how the game is going, which every single player on the map really should know exactly what to do. So I'm excited to see if they can hold their own in the early game, because if they can do, then I'm expecting them to do well in that midpoint.
Well, the only way to get to the early game is past the draft phase. So let's go ahead and jump into picks and bans here for game number 1, and we'll see what these teams are going to be able to pull through. This is also an interesting conversation. When you have a sub that comes in, Stuart being the one playing here, usually we will see teams shuffle around, either based on what they need. Typically in support right now, there's, I would argue, a plethora of gods that you can play over there, some that are ban-worthy, like that Yamoja. But do you think this is something that Get a Grip are going to have to change? Like, are they going to have to draft specifically for Stuart, or can they just go about their normal day and know that because it's a support, it's maybe not that big of a deal?
I think they would have practiced with Stewart because it's not going to be like a last minute thing here that they're going to draft in an ADC main to play in the support. They would most likely have gone for another support player if it was a last minute substitution here for Ionic. So they would have had practice with him. They would know exactly what he's looking for, what he's not comfortable with as well in picks and bans. So there would be 2 or 3 picks for him that they would have practiced consistently, and I would imagine that one of them is going to be a sleeper pick that Spreen will not really consider ban-worthy. They'll do fine to get Stewart a god that he's comfortable with.
Yeah. No big pressure on them, right, throughout this one. So I think we can go forward and see how these teams are doing. Right now, Get a Grip, I mean, pretty standard bans when it comes down to the Umoja that was mentioned earlier, but alongside the Persephone and the Hell, nothing too out of the ordinary. Over on the other side, Ratatoskr was the first ban. Maybe not too outlandish from what we've seen out of these Challenger Circuit teams, but maybe not something you're used to seeing, as well as the Nike jumping up there as well. Ra, given the fact that Pagon is on Get a Grip, kind of makes sense to try and limit him, but this Guan Yu, being the first pick, he has been game-changing. At least yesterday we got to see him a lot. Today we've seen him a few times. He has just skyrocketed in precedent for this tournament.
For me, he has been the pick of the tournament. A lot of people have just been looking at Set, saying he's the most overpowered god in competitive right now, especially in picks and bans. But for me, my money's been on Guan Yu. If you're just excluding Ram as well, he's sort of up there. But like you said, he's been game-changing, can play multiple different roles. So I imagine that the Guan Yu is going to be playing in the solo lane this game. But that protection shred, the heal, the slow, the cavalry charge to be able to dive into the back line very easily, it all points to what North America and somewhat Europe like to do as well, which is just consistently fight and obliterate the backline as quickly as possible.
Well, I'm looking at this.
Please lock this in.
There's a Set. That makes sense. We've been talking about Set. You had mentioned Set and that dialogue about Guan Yu and how these two, along with the Rom that you had mentioned, have been very, very prominent. And so that's not unexpected. Loki, though, I mean, like, I think I was even talking to you about this earlier because we haven't seen him in the SBL. None of the SBL teams have run him. But you felt like he was in a viable place, at least now, to be run. Yeah,
I think he is one of the most underlooked solo laners right now, and I'm going to explain a tiny bit about this because I've been playing it on Smite Game Stream. I've been doing it myself as well. Right now, Tank Loki is obnoxiously dumb. It is just straight up dumb. You build full tank Loki with Gladiator Shield. You might get like 1 damage item at the end at Heartseeker. You become nigh on unkillable in team fights, and you still are able to just destroy a carry in the backline by yourself. It is ridiculous. And with the fact that they've got Set on their side, I think Set might be looking to play in the jungle. That tells me that this Loki is going to go into the solo lane up against the Guan Yu. Not the best matchup for him, but still one that he can look to win, still one that he can look to fight into the Guan Yu as he couldn't before, but then it doesn't matter because he's going to get to late game anyway.
Well, it's an interesting god to lock in general, but now to juggle. The Set, again, something you're used to. Terra going to be locking in the top 3 there for Spreed, so definitely not necessarily running the tier list right now, running comfort picks on their side. Get a Grip, though. Guan Yu, Achilles, Sobek, all of these we have seen be very prominently featured at the forefront of a lot of these games. Guan Yu we talked about earlier, but Sobek and Achilles. Sobek hasn't quite seen a lot of play here in North America so far, but if you go back to Europe yesterday, he was incredibly strong, so we'll have to see how that's going to handle, especially because that is where the point of contention is. Your support player right now is the one that's under the magnifying glass on Get a Grip. The bans Yanis, Baron Samedi, Scylla, and, well, at this rate, I'm just going to go ahead and, assume another mage, Poseidon taken away. Mid laners going to be reaching deep into their pocket for this one. I mean, what synergizes well with Loki, Terra, and Set? Is there a mage that comes to your mind off the top of your head?
Well, you have Set, which is a dive god, Loki, which is a dive god, Terra, which is a dive god. So your choices are either pick Nuwa to help facilitate the dive, or pick Yanis, which is banned, or Thoth to help facilitate the dive from a long range.
Yeah.
There's not much. You're just basically sacrificing a mid laner in this draft, so it doesn't really matter what they play. Or Morrigan to also help the dive.
they follow up your idea. Set, who's a dive god, Loki, who's a dive god, Terra, who's a dive god, and Morrigan, depending on how you play her, who can also just be a dive god, right? So at this point, they're just going all in on one. And well, hey, we've been talking about how high priority Rom is. Looks like he might go 9th overall in the draft. Hebo picked up for the first time today, and I believe the first time this week. He's been banned a few times out there. But this is another interesting one to come through. If I'm looking at Get a Griff draft, I'm scared of this. I think 10 times out of 10, this is a frightening draft.
I am terrified. I never want to face a Hebo when there's a Sobek on the enemy team, because I know if I get plucked once with my beatstand, I'm just dead. There's no chance of me. I'm landing dead. If the pluck misses, there's a good turnaround potential here for Spreen, and, well, if you can't get Ram to help facilitate the dive, you might as well just get an ADC that can get themselves out of trouble. Jingwei makes a lot of sense here for Spreen. Pagon on Hebo. This man has been almost running the NA side of the SCC by himself at times. And he's playing a god that just could carry games 1 versus 5, so it's going to be difficult for Spreen here. They do have the dive composition to be able to deal with the Hebo, but the question is, can they get enough damage on him before the mass peel starts?
Yeah, the mass peel is the key factor that you had just mentioned. Get a grip. That is a well-rounded draft that comes through. Spreen, I mean, they're testing the waters. I'm interested to see what these two are going to, or mainly the two picks that stand out to me, what this Loki is going to be doing, as well as the Terra, but that's just because I always love Terra and I like seeing her played. But if you had to give it up to one of these two, well, you know what? We won't even ask you how you're feeling about it. We'll just go and see how these two are going to handle it. Game number 1 right now.
And this is a good one. Get a Grip versus Spreed, #1 seed versus a team that can give the #1 seed a run for their money. Dolson and Aggro on the call. Doug, of course, working the camera for us. And Aggro, as exciting as it is that we've got a Loki locked in, I think Relic choice here is out of this world. You got all 10 players opting for Vision Shard straight out of the fountain. Almost unheard of.
You are such a clown, Dave. Like, is that really how we're gonna start this off? We're getting to cast a game together. You know, it's been a minute since you and I have been able to combine forces on a competitive Smite game, and that's what you're leading with. All right, no, that's fine. Yes, Dave. Let me yes and analyze what you said.
Yeah, please.
Vision Shard is the selection. It will help all 10 players identify where their enemy is or is not. At any given time. I think it's a very intelligent pickup by all 10 players. Great call.
Well, fantastic. And now let's root ourselves in some sort of reality here, and that is the reality that there's a Loki in the jungle. Never seen it, admittedly, in competitive play. Obviously, before his rework, never saw it. Now, after the rework, we're going to get my first competitive look at Loki out of the jungle. What are realistic expectations here for SOT?
I think that we could expect SOT to be a real factor in these team fights. I mean, he's not exactly a god that puts a lot of pressure on laners early. I would not describe him as a particularly great ganker. But in team fights, he's very, very difficult to handle because mostly of the two. The blind is annoying, but not always the end-all, be-all. It's more about that damage reduction that it applies to the targets that it hits. So on Phoenix Sieges and the objective fights, putting that on top of the enemy Hunter and Mage becomes really, really problematic for them to get their damage off in the subsequent team fights. The ultimate is still fantastic. There's a lot you can do.
Well, it's a double stun from Blugan, I think, to set up the skirmish we're seeing here. Meerkat trying to dance behind Stewart. Can you block enough autos for the time being? The answer is yes. Blugan drops down a pillar, won't be there for the damage. Both supports kind of peeling out for the respective Hunters, and somehow everyone stays alive here. But now you got to look at health and mana of this Terra. It's going to be an awkward few moments here for Blugan as they try to sustain back into the lane.
Not a bad trade either way for Spreed. The fact is that Terra at level 2 is just not a character that fights particularly well. No dash pickup there by Blugan means that after that 2 is down, his DPS is kind of just gone. If he had the 3-up earlier, it would have been better to use, as you can use it to make your auto attack slow, apply that passive. Maybe that could have gotten Meerkat killed once his beads were down, but honestly, if you're getting that much pressure out of a level 2 Terra, no matter what happens after that, you're pretty happy with it. That is not the expectation for what that god is going to bring right now. She's more of, a lot like Loki, a team fight god, and that's what Spreed's composition is really based on, is grouping up as 5 and utilizing their dive potential between the Set and the Loki, and then just the outright team fight boost that is a Terra ult, most likely ×2 with Spreed's ult.
Well, it's ever so important as well to kind of keep the hunters down if we're specifically talking about handing over first or second blood or whatever it may be. Obviously, the possibility is there really with the Sobek to set up some early kills. I feel like talking about hunters, we've seen a pretty healthy variety this weekend. Obviously, a lot of Ram, a lot of Heimdall. We've seen Jingwei, Anher. I mean, we've seen these guys kind of dip all into the hunter pool, it feels like. In a lot of games, Aggro, as painful as it might be for mid laners like us to admit, a lot of these games starting to get run over by the hunters. It's been an interesting meta, I think, to watch form, at least this weekend specifically.
Yeah, I mean, of course it should be hunters. Their job is just easier than ours, Dave. I mean, as you know,
oh God, yeah,
hunter is just easier mage. Their auto attacks are our cooldowns, and we have cooldowns. I mean, Evo maybe included. They're throwing out 2.5 attacks a second that all do 200 damage. They should be able to do more. But in all honesty, it has been a little bit of a rough season for the hunters. I think that their early game impact is lower than it's been in a few seasons, which is in my mind a good thing for the overall balance of the game because they do so much come late game, and that really hasn't changed. I think that it's just been a little bit more jungle focus over here in the mid game and less so in the early game. When there's jungle focus and duo lane early game, it takes their agency out of the game because junglers are determining what happens in that lane. Right. But what junglers are coming over more in the mid game, hunters can play around it a little bit better. They have tools to actually fight back and they're not just sitting ducks. And that's where good hunter players are going to die less to those mid game ganks and maybe turn it around, set up for a counter gank, things like that. With that being more of the meta, I think that's why we're seeing more hunter players start to separate themselves from the pack. I mean, look what Griff was able to do in the last set there for Mind the Gap. I mean, he single-handedly turned that game based on winning a 2v1 in his lane. That's what I expect to see more of, is these hunters have gotten to understand their builds, their meta characters, and the changes in the way the map has been played.
And honestly, what a matchup we've got, right? I mean, Meerkat and Gaijay, two very, very proven hunters, so I'm excited to watch that battle unfold throughout this set as well. All's been quiet through the first 5 or so minutes of the game. No real level discrepancies to look at. Pagon about a half level ahead of Spreen, or so it would look. And you talk a lot, or we've talked a lot about mitigating some of that late game damage being very important for Spreed. I mean, I look at almost every single god that Get a Grip has picked out here, and damage mitigation against them has got to be the utmost importance, right? I mean, Pagon in his bursties, he's going to be able to be masked as well, depending on the route that build goes. We've seen some interesting attack speed kind of forced onto some of those jungle picks here as of late, but I mean, you just look at Get a Grip's comp, and the ability to kind of one-tap as this game goes on, I think just increases.
And it's really perfect to have a Sobek slotted in with compositions like this, because it's just toss somebody, I don't care if it's a frontliner or not, into the back line. We then knock them up as they land. Momentum will continue them going backwards, kind of like what we thought Pagon was going to do, but Solar Patrol gets that ultimate off in time. Stewart, not quite so lucky. First blood goes Spreed's way.
And Pagon's going to have to work his way on the water carpet out and away. You're thinking for a moment there, if you Get a Grip, that you've probably got first blood on the board. Pagon unable to finalize the kill there. SOT, though, did take some big chunk damage, has to back away. I suppose if there's a silver lining here, it's that it's Blugan that ends up picking up the first blood here, and Get a Grip will have to slow things down a little bit unless Mast wants to restart the fighting. He'll dash in, poke down just a little bit of damage onto Spreen, or maybe it's going to be a lot more than a little. Are you kidding me? Look for the execute around the side. We'll choose not to go for it. Instead, a tower shot. Oh, the snipes from Meerkat on stage left. We'll pick up a kill now for Get a Grip. What a rotation there early from Meerkat. Pick him up a kill.
Really good rotation, and that is a long time coming. That's Mass saying, hey, I'm going to look for them on right side mids. That's Meerkat understanding that he can be an impact on a fight that happens like that he can afford to miss half a wave, and picks up a kill and sets Spreen a little bit behind, allows Pagon to keep on farming. Really love that play from Meerkat and getting himself and Get a Grip their first kill.
A small moment there, but Stewart able to steal away the purple buff, so maybe slightly aggravating over there. Gaijay just fall a little bit behind in that regard. Meerkat now with the kill on board. That's what you expect, though, I guess, from this ROM. I mean, Gaijay was over there rotating towards mid as well, but you just can't compete with the range that those snipes bring about. How about the guts from Mast as well to chase down that kill, despite the ability of Spreed to kind of peel him out and slow things down. But 1 kill apiece on the board. Get a Grip are going to pull just slightly ahead in the gold department because of that. I think I also start to look towards the solo lane matchup and how this Guan Yu has started to rocket forward in pick count here this weekend as well. And it's not only just that he's getting picked aggro. I mean, he has been prioritized early and often in a lot of these drafts and has really been able to impact the games that he's in. I'll return to this point in just a moment, see what Blugan and SOT are able to do. First time we're seeing the new Loki gank, and there's plenty of burst potential there. Meerkat deleted, and Spreed will find their second kill of the game.
2 ults, get his beads at the same time. Meerkat just a little bit too far pushed up, and by the time they showed up on the ward, you're not going to be able to do a whole lot about that. As long as Loki is ulting, I think his gank potential is fine. It's just without that ult, it goes far lower than other assassins, like, say, a Raven, who can still blink 3 you and put you in a very bad position. Good start so far for SOT.
Oh, no. Oh, whoa, where did Spreen go? I blinked and I missed what happened there. Pagon, just a nice volley of abilities there. Doesn't even have to use his ultimate, but Stewart will try to stay alive. Heat, of course, will be able to collapse on this one. Lurking in the waters won't save you there, Stewart. Now it's SOT left alone. Execute waiting around the wings here. If Mast is going to hit it, but it's Haddix instead. That pulls back a kill. Heat as well has a double. These are back and forth engagement. But Spreed just a bit ahead in the grand scheme of things. 2 for 1 as far as we stand. Gonna get worse, make it a 3 for 1 over the last minute or so. That's just a better collapse from Spreed.
Yeah, just a couple of odd decisions by Get a Grip players. I mean, first it's Stewart who's too far forward, and he's got a pass. He's not usually a support player. He's subbing in here for Get a Grip, where Yannick used to be. Stewart typically an ADC, so he's going to be making some positional mistakes, and he makes one by the enemy blue buff. But then Pagon steps up where you know your support is dead in that spot. You really shouldn't be stepping up to that position in order to help out. Heat is already in the Kingslayer, so he licks his lips as a Hebo comes around the corner. That's an easy kill for him. And then Mask goes, you know, wasn't that bad? Like, maybe I should just go in and make sure that we're giving up as many kills as possible here. And then he gets picked for free right after that. So you could go 1 for 1 solo patrol for Stewart and feel really good about that trade. Not the way it ended up.
My vital essence.
2 more snipes, 1 more. Oh, Gaijay will dodge out the final shot there. This is also something I feel like we've seen a lot more up here this weekend, is Hunters just kind of going all out and 1v1ing another, but we have seen this as a result. A lot of Hunters suddenly being caught at. Meerkat does not have his ultimate. Will get rooted down there for the time being. No beads for the next 15 seconds if he's able to delay that long. I'm not sure he's going to be able to, and SOT will collapse. Pick up a kill now for Spreed, and luckily Get a Grip won't overextend just yet. And they will end up getting away. But look at that little bit of chunk damage that he does. He's opted for a bit of a slightly different build here, aggro. Sometimes see Soul Eater very early on with these set picks, but it's a Frostbound Hammer. I'll give you a moment to think on maybe why he's doing that. As Mast and Stewart double stunned in. Big setup there from Blugan, and another singular pick given over to Spreed.
Gold Fury still the call. Pagon does have the best secure on the map, but that would require him to get awfully close to use that crushing wave. Wise by Get a Grip. They've already lost 2. Just let Spreed take that Gold Fury. It's still not a massive lead for Spreed right now, so it's not a game loser in order to give up that Gold Fury. It is a loss if you start throwing yourselves at it over and over and over again. Gotta say, I love the way that Blugan played that gank on Meerkat, just leaving up those walls and knowing that Meerkat doesn't have any beads. If he goes in towards mid, it's possible for him to get out. If I keep him locked in this half of the map, then eventually Solar Patrol will have a clear path to him. So really, really good patience. Meerkat loses his a little bit and steps into the wall, which seals his fate. That's all set up by a good play by Blugan. 2-0 and 5. He's been a part of every single kill so far for Spreed. This Terra has been looking good.
You sometimes get to see this true strength of this pick. Not hyper popular over in the SPL, but we do see her every once in a while, and definitely can show her worth here is Blugan. Heed now, as we were mentioning just before that Gold Fury fight, 2-0-2, 1 level ahead of Haddix on the other side. Make it a half level as Haddix will catch up here. SOT off to a good start at 3-1-2. But to kind of return to that point, Aggro, Heed opting for that Frostbound Hammer first and foremost overall. Obviously, his target and his goal now is to just stick on whatever backliner or maybe even frontliner that he's able to get to.
I think it's going to really cause problems for Mask in particular, who is oftentimes going to be looking to execute the set before he's able to get a whole lot of healing off. Frostbound Hammer is going to make it very difficult to get away from him. It isn't as good as it often is because there is a Hebo on the other side, so Pagon, with that Atlas of the Yellow River, second ability, can just end up making it impossible to slow him or anybody on his team who's walking on that wet paper, but as long as that ability's down, Pagon's just dead to one auto attack from Heed, because even if he ults away, that's well within your teleport range as a set. If you can catch Pagon with that 2 down, maybe off a rotation or something like that, he's going to be in serious trouble, and it looks like Pagon actually recognizes that and picks up a sprint in his second slot. Not only is that great against Frostbound Hammer, but one of the things that makes Tank Loki so difficult to deal with is that his 3 is such a potent slow that is applied over a long period of time.
Ooh, Mast blinks in. Will not have the proc on the second dash in. Ultimate used, so I think that's maybe an indicator of how strong Mast might feel that SOT is at the moment. We'll use the Achilles ult to get out of that one alive. So both junglers on top of it will make their way over to the long lane at the same time. Both hunters still remain alive. Both purple buffs able to be locked down by their respective counterparts. At this point, though, only the Pyromancer up and able to be fought for. So I suppose maybe why Mast goes searching over here on this side of the map as the hunters were farming out.
Really good roll in by Meerkat, actually made sure that Gaijay had to use the beads. Don't forget that arrow after you roll, if you have one in your quiver, is going to cripple, and Guy ended up knocked up and nowhere to go, but quick fingers by him allowed him to get that dash off still. As a sovereignty pickup for Pagon is interesting. I thought it was going to be some sort of physical defense for him in mid. Ends up being the sovereignty. It's good against poke damage because the HP 5 is really high, and now it makes the backline very difficult to dive for Heed and Solar Patrol. Meerkat and Pagon, assuming they'll be standing pretty close to one another, are going to be getting an extra little bit of physical protection, and it's not too selfish from Pagon to go for something like a Breastplate of Valor in this instance, but Sovereignty makes it that much better for the whole team once they're grouped up. Matter of whether or not they're going to be able to get enough anti-heal is the question. I don't like how little anti-heal Get a Grip have so far. No Brawler's Beat Stick for Mask. He's picking up a mace, so it could be coming next, but it still feels a little bit late to me. No Divine Ruin yet for Pagon, and if he goes Divine Ruin next, then he's delaying a 20% pen option or something like an E-Staff that would give him even more survivability. The Sovereignty's good, but there is a trade-off.
Well, Meerkat follows Gaijay up and over, but Gaijay, as always on the Jingwei, will be able to stay alive. 1 level lead for Gaijay here. Could be some big damage onto the tower, but Meerkat needs to decide how long he wants to stick around here. SOT, I believe, was spotted out there around the corner, so Meerkat will have to leave. Look at this big rotation. 4 from Get a Grip on the left-hand side of the map. Mast is tanked down, just a little bit of tower damage. One more shot will knock down the tier 1 tower over here on left. Nobody wants to walk in and get it done just yet, but they'll regroup, knock things on down. But what does Spreen have to say about it? Will they answer? Oh, big root from Blugan onto the backside. Spreen is going to work his way, and he's transformed into the Guan Yu. It's a stun down onto Mask now, who will have to ult away for the second time in as many minutes. But he's transferred over from the solo lane. Will he have something to say about it just yet? Somehow nobody's died here. Maybe it's Haddix who gets stunned down over in the back line. Another double stun from Blugan. Keeps Get a Grip right where they're at. Heed will use his beads, and somehow we're full strength.
Don't you just love the healers? We got a Terra on one side, a Guan Yu on the other. A whole lot of damage that ends up at exactly 0 kills, but Get a Grip's certainly the ones a little bit stronger for it. The Terra healing is much more bursty, centered around that ultimate. Guan has that lower cooldown heal, and that's why Get a Grip can afford to stick around.
Gaijay will have to leap away once more. Primal Fury getting quite low here. Get a Grip will start it, Get a Grip will finish it, but they are still quite low. Spreed has been able to go back to base as a team, and most of them have been able to heal up. But not all of them. Heat is very low here, but he's got the backup of the rest of his team. It's a big knockback, re-engage. Stewart goes down, double kill from Spreen. Chunk damage cleaves across the front line there of Get a Grip, and Spreed pick up a couple.
Just really odd pathing by Haddix, a little bit more by Stewart, but Stewart kind of gets caught because Haddix starts walking towards him, and Stewart starts to backpedal to make sure that Haddix can get out, which just sets them up for that double assassination. Really, really odd. I just don't know why Haddix wouldn't run straight, just straight line out towards your tier 2. Now you can use this extra sustain that you have as Spreed and head towards the Fire Giant.
Mast ults out again. He has not been able to find an execute here, and might not be able to find safety. He's getting stunned in now by Blugan. He'll dash away, stays alive. Pagon crushing waves through the side of Spreed. Still no kills on the board. And if Spreed were aiming to bait, they at least did that, and now they can turn around and maybe look towards Pyro.
Couple ultimates in exchange for Blugans once again, so not a bad trade for them, and Pyromancer should be alongside it. Keeping their lead about where it was. I mean, you get a couple kills and a Pyro on the back end of losing the Gold Fury. Keeps your lead at about that 2,000 gold mark. Just feels like Get a Grip is still on different pages. They don't seem to be as cohesive of a unit as Spreed has been so far in this game. It's just a couple individual mistakes that I think have really hurt them so far, but they've made plays around the Spreed team, which has proven to be difficult for a lot of other squads.
Stewart will have to use Lurking in the Waters here as Blugan has been utterly consistent this game on a lot of the engages. I don't remember the last time I saw just one person being rooted down or stunned in. This Terra has been absolutely swinging. And Agri, you talk about how Get a Grip are maybe not on the same page. It seems like Mast is maybe the one who kind of feels maybe a bit out of sorts in this one. I've mentioned it a few times in these fights, but a lot of these big ultimates, the ones you like to use for executes just haven't been there. We'll see if maybe this one has something else in mind. Mast gets stunned down here. Pagon deleted by Spreen, who now transforms into the Guan Yu once again, looking for a stun in, a little bit more damage. Walls go up, waiting for Meerkat to land back down, but Meerkat will find one before he ends up falling. SOT tanking up the tier 2 tower here in mid, while Mast and Gaijay do battle in on the backline. Very separated out is this fight. He wants a little bit more, though. Loki damage pouring through from SOT. Haddix is going to get melted away here. Thorns, will they save his life this time? Yes, they will. Haddix stays alive, but Mast right back in. Execute won't find it this time. Heed will not survive as Mast will finally pick up a kill.
Looking for a second as Solar Patrol is low, so is Spreed, but all of a sudden it's just Mast here to try and stand tall. Haddix on the way. Good aim from Spreed.
And Mast will find the stun, but it's a double kill from Gaijay to put the nail in the coffin on this big team fight. Long enough, in fact, that Haddix was able to go back to base, heal up, and that'll likely delay. I was going to say, well, it would be a ridiculous Fire Giant call, and that's not what Spreed are looking for. Haddix instead blinks through, thought he might be able to find Spreen. But instead, he's just going to patrol this area, Haddix will, and make sure that Spreed don't stick around. That's a big, long, drawn-out team fight that got kind of messy there in the middle aggro. Both teams kind of got separated from one another.
It's so hard to team fight against what Spreed's draft has become. I mean, who do you hit? All right, Assassin's in. Let's hit him. Oh, wait, it's Loki who's full tank. So, well, I guess Bruiser at best with the Glad Shield and the Sledge. Okay, we're not going to hit him. We're going to hit the other Assassin that's in our back line, and that's a Set who's also pretty bruisery. Okay, we'll hit their mid laner, but she's a Morrigan, and that's just going to transform into something like a Terra or a Guan, and that's not going to work really. And then, well, let's hit the ADC, but that's Jing Wei, and she'll just fly away with their strike and create more distance than we can cover. Who do you hit on Spreed? Meanwhile, they're able to pick their targets pretty laissez-faire because you've got a Terra ultimate that's going to do so much damage for you that you don't need to do 100 to 0 damage. It makes this tank Loki build even more effective than it already is, and I think that it is likely the best way to play this god because of how good his utility is and how annoying it can be to get him off you.
So fight in the mid lane is SOT. Thought he might be able to get a sneaky kill onto Pagon, but instead maybe it's SOT that's made the mistake. Finally, The execute from Mast will connect onto SOT. Just a bit overextended there, aggro, but you can see how much damage even a tank Loki can still do onto Pagon.
Yeah.
But that'll probably delay a lot of the strategy that Spreed had set out here for the next 30 seconds or so.
That is pretty crazy that Pagon has a sovereignty, like a real sovereignty, and he's still got half health by a Loki ult, a little bit of damage from the 3. I mean, with as little penetration as Solar Patrol has, just a lot of bruiser stats so far for him. That's pretty nuts, and definitely shows that you can't just take his damage lightly.
One-man advantage, that means Fire Giant now for Get a Grip, who's brawling over here with Heed, but Heed has not had the support that he's had through the rest of these fights. Sniped down from Meerkat, will not find the kill this time. Haddix will attempt to find a stun, and he'll find a kill. He'll do one better. And now it's Spreed who are on the back foot after controlling all of the team fights throughout this game, aggro. Now it's maybe Get a Grip who can control the pace.
But Solar Patrol's back up at this point. Now you look at the Relic situation, not exactly pristine for Get a Grip. This shell timing from Stewart is going to have to be good if they want to take another fight.
Gaijay knocked up in the back line. Haddix is just going to keep SOT at bay. Fire Giant has been reset. An awkward moment, right, this might be the call where Pyromancer's just there and it's just easier to work towards. Plenty of vision coverage for Spreed. Be able to see where Get a Grip are funneling. And so it'll be the Pyromancer and back away. There's some vision as well from Get a Grip, so not sure Spreed will be able to try to sneak one away here. We'll clear out some of that vision, so the opportunity definitely still there.
Well, surprised that Spreed is even messing with this idea. I mean, he's still not here for another 5 seconds, and then he's got to walk all the way towards this FG. Get a Grip, it must be the Relic situation that made them want to drop that. Their ultimates also weren't all up, and that's a big deal.
Shards.
But with Terra, right, their vision shards are gone, so what's the point of even playing? The Terra ultimate was down on the other side. You don't have the Morrigan ultimate was down. They don't have that much burst available. They lost a lot of their dive by losing Heed. I think Get a Grip probably could have stayed and pulled that fire, but it is a high execution call, and if this team isn't clicking on the same page quite yet, you know, with Stewart walking in for Ionic and this roster still needing a little bit of time to gel, only playing together for one phase, if they aren't all clicking, doing things like risky Fire Giants 4v5 is a very, that's as high level as you get, that you have to execute perfectly. So maybe just a little bit of lack of confidence from this squad in that moment, because I think they still had an opportunity.
This game probably closer than what the kills would dictate. It's a 6 differential in the kills department. Only about 2K in the gold department. Most of carries and laners starting to get close to that level 20 mark, so probably a lot more even than what we expected. Some of that anti-heal starting to tick over. Brawlers beat Stick for Mast. Pagon did end up going into Divine Ruin after the Sovereignty, so that'll definitely buy, or maybe cancel out, a little bit of time that Spreed has been able to find here in some of these fights. It's going to be a delicate situation. One from Spreed goes back. I'm not sure if Get a Grip saw Heed back in base there. Maybe they did, and that's why they're starting to probe out just a little bit further here, but you can already tell Spreed are going to bide their time, back off, and look for the right engage.
What's the game plan here for Get a Grip is my question. I mean, are they looking to bait them in because they're not doing anything that will bait Spreed in? I imagine that it's get a pluck from Stewart onto somebody and start the team fight that way, but with a Terra on the other side who can make sure that she doesn't get tossed by placing down a stone, that's not exactly the easiest initiation tool, and again, Stewart is not a typical support, so having him be your only fight starter doesn't seem like the easiest way to get a fight, to get your game plan advanced. And looks like both teams are just going to stand around and wait until the other one makes a mistake, which is everyone's favorite way to watch Fire Giant dance play out.
That's right. I mean, it's a middle school dance. We're both staying on opposite sides of the room. No one wants to cross the line. It's too awkward. It's too uncomfortable. So we're just going to stand here for a little while until somebody gets the guts to start something up, and it's Get a Grip right now that have asked the FG to dance for the time being. Spreed close by, so they will be able to collapse on this. Fire Giant half HP, but gets reset into the back line. Goes Heed. Frenzy gets popped, but Get a Grip have turned. They focus their attention in onto peeling out for their backliners. Mast, though, has been left alone. His health bar way too low to re-engage on the fight. Heed's way too low to survive any longer. Now it's SOT with Thorns Abound. trying to find his way on in. Spreen, he's transformed once again into the Guan Yu, chased down Meerkat. So we stand at a 1-for-1 trade, but it's Spreed who have a little bit more leg room, a little bit more gas in the tank, want to keep going from range. Pagon gets taken down by SOT. Now Spreed can try to back away if Haddix won't find another kill.
And he will not. Double kill for Solar Patrol. And oh, Mask and Stewart decide, let's just get in there. It's now a triple for Solar Patrol, nearly a quadra. Blugan gonna claim his third instead. And who cares about the Fire Giant? This is right side Phoenix. I don't think, maybe even game. I mean, 2 towers up makes this a little bit sketchy. That Titan's gonna be fairly tanky, and you don't have the world's best DPS here. No Polynomicon for Spreen ends up being a pretty big deal. Yeah, I think that this is just gonna be right side Phoenix and reset, head back, and hope to go for an enhanced Fire Giant once everybody is back.
So what do we think? I mean, now we got to rewind the clock to the call that Get a Grip makes there, right? Where they start up the FG hoping to bait Spreed in, and it didn't work really at all there. I mean, you find an opening kill pretty early on in that fight. The fact that you got a kill onto Gaijay, I think, big. First death of the game for the Jingwei. But then Get a Grip just kind of get run down. I think now we're really starting to see some of that tangible awkwardness that Get a Grip are probably fighting with, in that they don't know, maybe, how to engage on these fights or play around some of these objectives.
It's just a tough team fight when he's able to get as much value as he was able to. I mean, he dies in the middle of the team fight, but he put just about everybody to half HP,
right,
and got all of his possible damage off. Who cares if he dies after that? He's done his job, and then is able to let the rest of the team surge forward. Spreen got to come into that fight so late, where everybody was so low and everybody had cooldowns that they were waiting on, that it's really easy for him to clean up from that position. That was really credit just to Heat in particular for getting a lot of cooldowns and getting a lot of damage off before he went down.
Right, and the Morgan transformation so late into that fight as well, and the final bit of chase down there. Massive for Spreed. It looks like we're barreling our way towards another Fire Giant dance. Surprised then, Aggro, I guess, then on the flip side of the coin, that Spreed are playing as cautious as they are. Do you think that their composition is one that almost relies on Get a Grip to play overconfident for just a moment and then be able to kind of run back in there? Do you think Spreed are probably strong enough to where they could pull the FG?
It's a good question. I think that it is a little bit more difficult for Spreed to be the initiators because Blugan doesn't have Blink. And what are you going to do? Find a ranged stun? You found the ranged stun, now what? Morgan too. Okay,
right.
We're done here. You know, like that's kind of all you got from a distance. You really do need the enemy team to start it up. And if you're Get a Grip, you could discuss that amongst yourselves and be like, hey, you know, they really don't have a great way to get these fights started. Let's let them start these Fire Giants up. Don't give them an opportunity.
Well, the fight now started on the Get a Grip side of the jungle. Haddix, oh my god, where'd the health bar go? Off the cavalry charge, he has to leave the fight. Mast will use his ultimate to escape, but Gaijay will not allow Haddix to do the same. Crushing wave in from Pagon. Not only did it not find a kill, it put him right on death's doorstep. Mast will turn around, though. He was alone with 3 of Get a Grip. It's a 2-for-1 trade as we stand. Pagon down, both solo laners as well.
Very, very split up fight from Get a Grip and really doing the exact opposite of what we were just asking them to do, which is be patient and let the Fire Giant be your 6th man. Instead, Haddix gets a little bit caught, Stewart gets a little bit caught, Haddix is forced to all-in commit, and from his positioning, it's just too easy to blow up. Kind of like that.
That's a level 18 Sobek, by the way. I guess he has E-Staff, so a little less tankiness there. Double kill for Gaijay. Yeah, it sure was a level 18 Sobek. 1-6 now for Stewart. Been a tough start to this game. Fire Giant, about half HP. This one is enhanced. We'll have to see. I mean, the only real play here, the only question, as the deicide rolls through for SOT, is do you have the health bars to wait 10 or so more seconds, get Heat on the board here with this enhanced Fire Giant. It looks like Gaijay will be doing the final bit of tanking. And now finally, Aggro, it seems like the game has been busted open.
This is a great opportunity for Spreed. They've really played this team fight phase really well, but it shouldn't be too much of a surprise because this is what their composition is built to do. They're built to be very difficult to lock down in these team fights. They've got a basic cheat when it comes to 5-on-5, which is Terra Ultimate. They've got 2 if they need it, but most of the time it's been Spreen transforming into Haddix in order to just complete the backline dive triumvirate with Solo Troll and Heed. Gaje's been managing to stay safe because he's one of the safest hunters in the whole game. It's just a well-crafted composition from Spreed that has been giving Get a Grip a lot of trouble, in particular Pagon, who has been able to get off nearly 0 effective damage in these team fighting phases because he's just getting all in. And with the Sovereignty build, it's good if you can get multiple rotations of cooldowns off, but when you're getting basically forced out of the fight instantly anyways, having the threat of being able to deal more damage is more important than living for an extra 3 seconds. You need to be able to get enough damage off in your window. Basically the way I think about defense on backliners and damage characters is, does this item earn me more damage over the course of a team fight than a damage item in this slot? And in this case, I don't think it has for Pagan.
Right.
He has been forced out of these fights either way and killed either way, and now his water hands are just doing less, and he has less threat on the enemy team because of it.
Right.
I don't know that it something else in that slot makes a world of difference. It likely doesn't. I think it's a structural team fight problem for Get a Grip. They aren't able to peel this many dive characters with a Sobek, who is not a great multi-character peel tool. He's really better at getting one person off of you. But at the same time, Pagon's got to find a way to be a little bit more impactful than he has been.
Well, maybe the chance now is going to get to see a full 5-on-5 Phoenix defense. That Spreed is going to work their way into the defense of Get a Grip. He left alone on the right-hand side. The Phoenix had respawned, but it'll immediately go right back down. That'll free this setup to rotate over. Bit of a flex between Haddix and Pagon. You can see they're trying to figure out what direction Spreed are trying to go in on here. Mast will ult away. Heed in on the chase. He's in the Titan room. There is way too much damage there to duel out with this set. Now it's a double stun over on the left-hand side beneath that Phoenix. Meerkat able to kite away. Stewart is as well. You can't back into those walls, Mirker. You're going to go down. Beads just in case. Now it's a cavalry charge from Haddix, but it has not done much. SOT still alive. Phoenix goes down, and the mid lane Phoenix shortly to follow.
And Meerkat's hitting Solo Troll for 100 damage in auto. That's gonna be a long time before he's able to get a kill on that Loki. All 3 Phoenixes down. Spreed now is just waiting for the inevitable.
Here comes the collapse from Spreed. Frenzy and Shell both used by Blugan. Stewart lurking in the waters here. Haddix right back into the fight. Cavalry charge from Spreed to re-engage. Massive stun on the back. Get a Grip. Eviscerated Spreed and finally cracked the base. Still walk things in. 35 minutes in. Game 1's in the books.
And it was close through the mid-game. I mean, this Get a Grip squad was skirmishing well, but when it came to 5-on-5s, it didn't really feel that close. And I think that part of that is composition-based, and part of that is how well Spreed is working together as a unit in comparison to this Get a Grip squad. It's not saying that Get a Grip can't make adjustments and win, even though they aren't playing well as a unit right now. You can draft compositions that are a little bit more individual based. I just don't think that was really it. I want to see them take the initiation mantle away from Stewart. Don't make him be the one to get your fight started for you. Let Haddix or Mast do that, and then let Pagon be the star that we know he can be. But put the man on something like a Thoth and just let him shine.
I mean, you look at that composition from Get a Grip, and it did not feel like at any point, except for maybe early on when Meerkat rotated and found some snipes, anyone was able to do what they wanted to do on their individual picks. It was just so forced in the opposite direction as the mid-game turned into late game there. And as such, Spreed, they're able to find a win here in Game 1. We'll take a quick break. We'll be right back to Game 2.
Well, after a little bit of early turmoil, Spreed end up taking game number 1. We'll talk a little bit more about that, but first I want to reach out to all the cosplayers out there, everyone who really enjoys Smite and really enjoys working on your craft. First off, you're at home a lot, and I'm calling out my wife right now. I know she's going to hear me. So you can work on your cosplay if you have the room to do it. That's exactly what her argument is on the other side. But you can also put your skills to the test and get started on your Smite cosplay right now, because on January 7th, during broadcast, we will be hosting and showing the 7th annual cosplay contest brought out to you and featuring you. So to participate, all you need are your cosplay skills, the materials, and a camera to show off what you have. You want to go to hi-rezshowcase.com/cosplay to do that. I've been watching the cosplay contest for the last few years. There are some amazing people out there crafting that all the time, and I'm excited to see what this year has, especially if we get some new entries. So make sure you go again, hi-rezshowcase.com/cosplay to get involved in that one. But Alpha Jackal, we're back on the desk here, and we're going to get involved, instead of cosplay, in breaking down that last set. Well, last game, I guess, that comes through. Maybe the set a teensy bit because he was in there, but the Loki, I think, is the one that kind of catches everyone's eye going into it. SOT has a good performance, and it just feels like even though early game, again, some stumbles from Spreed, they get towards the end game they wanted to and just started thrashing every team fight.
Oh, when you're in a late game team fight against a Morrigan, a Loki, and a Set, you don't know where any of them are coming from, and all of a sudden, bang, there's 3 people on top of you, and there's nothing you can do to stop them. And it was just ridiculously difficult for anyone on the opposition to deal with that sort of level of pressure and level of surprise dive. And what's more, the second that Solo Troll even got onto any of them, he was just instantly unkillable because of the build that he had.
And we can see this. Actually, I'm happy the first highlight comes from Blugan, just because when you're Terra, I can't remember if it was at the very end, still 4-1, but I remember marking it in my head as a 4-1 Terra. But when you have that good of a slash line, as a support player, you know your team is ahead. And realistically, being able to find a lot of stuns, I think turn around a lot of fights based on whether Stewart, Haddix, whoever went in on the side of Get a Grip, and then just made it a little bit easier, right? If the front line's out of the way, SOT had a much easier time getting to Pagon and just shutting down that Hebo left and right, making sure they couldn't do it. And also, I want to just throw him out there because I think it was Spreen transformed into that Guan at the very end and got a really, really good-looking ult, but it doesn't necessarily stand up to the triple that then becomes, I believe, almost quad. No, Blugan takes that one away. Either way, it showcased the viability, I think, that you're seeing here from Spreed.
Yeah, Blugan's Terror Ultimate is one of the things that really held this composition together. If you're going to have somebody, you're going to have 2 almost bruisers coming out from your solo and jungle, you kind of need to have a bit of extra damage coming out from your support, and Terra does exactly that. I mean, she's got good setup, good control, but the big thing that she does bring is that Earth and Fury Ultimate, and as you highlighted, just huge amounts of damage to come out from the Loki because of it. I mean, the Agonizing Visions, that tick damage, will proc that ultimate very quickly alongside those flurry of blows that he has. So it's all around a fantastic draft from Spreen. And look at that player damage from Guy J. He went completely under the radar there. What?
I would not have guessed. Of all the people I was thinking of talking about, Guy J wasn't really high on the list. I mean, I was going to go to Heed. I would have talked about Spreen. 40,000. I mean, not quite double the next highest since he had 2 players at 24,000, but more than double anybody on Get a Grip. I mean, that's ridiculous amounts of damage for a Jingwei to do in a game.
I mean, if you're just having to barely survive against a Set, a Loki, and a Morrigan, you have no time to even look at the Jingwei in the backline that's just critting you for like 500 damage. So to me, there's no surprises that he's done that much damage, but to the fact that he managed to get away with it was kind of insane.
Well, here's the question for Guy J then. Can you do 40,000 part 2? Is he going to be able to continue that up in the second game? I guess that's really where my eyes are starting to turn now. If you are Get a Grip, what kind of changes did you need to make? Aggro had suggested kind of just getting Pagon onto a signature god and letting him be the star. And honestly, especially with the way things went, you know that your duo lane's maybe going to be a little more lax because Stuart's there and subbing in for the weekend. So do you then just shift and divert all of your focus onto the mid lane?
You could shift focus completely onto the mid lane, but I'm looking at drafting in something for either Haddix or Masked to be the initiator. He brought up a good point that they relied on Sobek, on Stuart, for the initiations, but that just wasn't there. Let's be real. There wasn't really too much he could do to initiate those fights in that sort of game. So take that job away from him, bring it onto the jungle, bring it onto the solo lane if you need to wait until the mid game, but just get Stuart onto something almost secondary engaged, something that can peel on the backline. Maybe something like a Ganesh could do quite well. You can bring the Terra onto his side as well to give him both options, but maybe not the Sobek if he can be trying to run more of a mid-game composition.
We'll talk about earning your respect. Loki, first ban on Get a Grip. Ra going to be joining him on the right-hand side of your screen. But over on the other side, the Ratatosker, the Persephone, 2 things that were banned out last time around. Hell going to be accompanying them. Mid laners, I mean, was realistically the large targets last time around. Persephone, Hell, and Ra were all banned first phase last time. Yamoja notably still open, so something that Spreed could go to. But then we saw 4 more get banned in the second phase. Do you think that is going to change the priority specifically for someone like Get a Grip, get Pagon, that god, as fast as possible, knowing that mages are definitely going to get sniped out later?
They most likely will take him in third pick. If you're going to be taking something for your almost star player, you don't want to give it to them very early, because then there's opportunity for a lot of counter pick on it. But if you take it as a third pick, you can then ban out a couple of the counter picks before Spreed do even get a chance to respond, and you get him quite a comfortable game in that instance. But Guan Yu left completely open. Guan Yu going to be taken. Yamoja going to be locked in here for Get a Grip, and no sign of the Ram just yet, which I do find a bit surprising.
I'm more curious. I mean, you know, we've been talking about Guan Yu. We talked about him a lot during the picks and bans for Game 1, and it was so easy to break down as simply, you know, he has been game-changing. We saw him yesterday in Europe. Today has been a big impact, although it wasn't for Spreed, or I guess for Get a Grip, who had locked him in, that he was a big impact. It was for Spreed that he ended up being the big impact thanks to that Morgan transformation. But to pick him over Yamoja is what kind of catches me off guard here. And so Get a Grip. I mean, maybe this is Spreed calling the bluff, staying, okay, cool. Let Stuart have Yamoja. We don't think he's going to make enough of a difference. Or maybe they just think they can handle it a little bit better because, as we've been talking about a lot today, this Khepri is going to come through for them, at least over in that support role.
I mean, for me, it just speaks to the fact that, right, Set's banned, so who's the next best solo laner? Guan Yu, and then there's a huge gap between the next best solo laners, I would say. So why don't you just take the Guan Yu? And I can see the confusion. I can see the fact that they've already locked the Khepri in, which means it's not going to be Nox support. No, it's the Morrigan. Always sneaking and transforming into very different gods. But no, the Morrigan, again, worked out well for them last game. Now they have 2 Khepri revives, so good luck killing anyone on Spreen. Good luck, Get a Grip. You're going to need it this game.
Yeah, I was thinking you had trouble when the Morrigan was transferring into the Guan Yu you had on your squad. Now you're going to be dealing with 2 Guan Yus at any given time, or maybe even worst case scenario, especially if I don't start seeing some executes. 2 Khepri reses, dare I say, put bad energy like that out into the universe? Maybe I should pull that one right back. But, you know, that potential I think that Spreed has is going to be excellent for them throughout this game, especially if they play similar to how they just did. Yamoja, Nemesis, King Arthur. I can't believe it. At any given time this year, every single one of these, Umoja still so, has been a top pick for some team in the SPL, even down here in the SCC, even in the SOC. They've been very prominent, and it feels weird counting them down already. Get a grip. That's a solid 3.
That is a very solid 3. If I'm about 2 months ago and I see this as my top 3, I'm like, well, game's over. We've won now.
Yeah.
Might as well just go on to the next set of picks up bans. But these days, as we've seen in this tournament, sustain is king, and Guan Yu does have some sustain on his side. Kepri resurrections have become extremely viable and almost game-changing in that sense. So this sort of draft, whilst 2 months ago would have been the best draft you can possibly get, realistically, it's now an okay draft. Does what you need it to do, but can still be improved upon slightly. I'm still looking out for a bit more of that real confirmed engage potential. Yes, you have the River's Rebuke coming out from Umoja to trap in the Guan Yu and the Capri, but I'm looking for more of an instant engage coming out from potentially the mid lane, or it's difficult to do so given it's the mid laner, but maybe something like a Raijin could be viable.
That'll be the options. I mean, not a lot left for Pagon. There's a wide array of mages. Scylla, notably, I think was banned last time. You had just mentioned the Raijin, Merlin, all of these still available to them, and they're going to be opting to go for that last as they try to kick out the legs from SOT himself, the Erlong, and the Serket ban. I almost called her Daji. Not something that we get to see too often unless you're adapting.
No.
So we'll have to see where he goes on the other side, because there's a lot of flexibility, I think, over there in the jungle. Jingwei gets locked in. Really good to Guy J last game. Do you think it's going to be as kind to get a grip here?
I mean, it always has the potential to just pop off this pick. It's incredibly safe, really difficult to gank. If you end up dying twice in lane, you need to go revisit how you play Jingwei, because you're obviously playing it wrong. That's sort of my rule of the trade. But Nike is going to be locked in here. That's a Nike or Guan Yu jungle then for Spreen. And I'm not quite sure which one fits the bill better.
That's the interesting conversation. I mean, Guan Yu, because of what we've seen out of him the last couple of days, I'm enticed to say that I'd prefer to see him over there in the solo lane, but there's also a whole host of people that prefer Guan Yu in the jungle, especially compared to some others. I've heard, I think even maybe Mifflin at some point, a couple of players have thrown out that they think his best role could be in the jungle, so maybe some flexibility there. But we've also seen Nike jungle throughout the year, so not anything too far-fetched for either of those maybe to make that flexibility, which makes it even more awkward, I think, for Get a Grip to come through. Chang'e, the last pick on their side, not necessarily the go-to mid laner we're used to seeing, someone who's been played a couple of times, I think yesterday, and that we've seen from sporadic teams in the SBL and throughout the year. How does she fit in this comp for you?
She fits the bill of the surprise initiation that we were looking for, the instant stun, whilst also providing good safety for herself with that immunity, has to time it well to get rid of that Guan Yu cavalry charge. I'm just not sure of its pick viability here, given the amount of control that Spreen have. It's very difficult for the Chang'e to stay alive when you have 2, 3, maybe even 4 forms of initiation on the enemy team. So I'm again looking at Pagon to pop off this game if Greater Gripper to stand a chance, if I'm honest.
I'm excited to see what they're going to be able to do with this. A sneaky amount of damage in that Chang'e, but is it going to be enough to get them tied up in this set? Spreed will have the answer for that one, as well as the casters down here in Game 2.
Yeah, I don't think I've done enough justice in kind of setting up the fact that this is the #1 seed in Get a Grip that is on the verge of falling down to the loser's bracket already to a seemingly red-hot Spreed. Still Dolson, still Aggro, still Doug. Working with you here for game number 2. Aggro, do you think, one of the big things I think we looked at for Get a Grip was kind of the conditional nature of their engage in game 1 and how very specific, had a very hard time doing what those individual picks wanted to do. You add a Umoja, you change up effectively your entire draft. Do you think Get a Grip have an easier time of finding some team fights here in Game 2?
I do, because I think Pagon can be the initiator for you here. This Chang'e mid has really evolved over these last few weeks, at least in the Smite ranked scene in North America, to really be a blink, ult the backline sort of pick. Now, that's a lot easier to execute in ranked and a lot easier to get away without being punished, but I really think that could be the call. In fact, he's already got Blink at level 1, so you know that he's going to be trying to be that aggressive pick. Mass is able to get fights started on the Nemesis. Stewart can still do it on the Umoja, and Haddix, once he gets Blink, will be able to get in there as well. So I think that it's going to be a little bit easier for Get a Grip to get these fights started. And their counter engage is better than it was the last game because of this Yemoja, who's really, really fantastic at separating fights with River's Rebuke, healing up the initial engage target, and then turning the fights on their head. So I like Get a Grip's composition quite a bit more.
At Wild, we've seen a lot more Yemoja here than we're usually used to. Big question comes, and then, you know, we'll cover this in later weeks, is how does this meta, because this is kind of our last look. This weekend is our last look at the big competitive meta before Worlds kicks off January 4th. By the way, make sure to tune in there. So this is going to be maybe an indicator of some of the meta that we're starting to see, where Yemoja is just consistently banned out or taken off the board in a lot of those SPL sets, but we've seen her this weekend maybe more than we're really used to. Heat very low already. This is going to be a fun lane to watch, I think, Aggro. The Guan Yu up against the King Arthur. There's plenty of brawl potential there in that lane, but might stay safe enough to avoid first blood. Really here, I think my mind goes to SOT and Mast, specifically this Nike out of the jungle. Haven't seen her in that jungle role much as of late.
She's been pretty flexible, a little bit of solo, a little bit of jungle, kind of all over the place, but teams have just decided that they like having a Nike on their squad, regardless of where you're going to find it. I can't blame them. Her initiation factor is fantastic, her counter engage is good, her damage is solid, her survivability is obviously great. She just kind of does it all, and she's got a great passive still, so you're not feeling too bad by picking Nike. When she falls behind, she definitely feels like she's not going to deal nearly as much damage as the traditional jungle pick. I think that's where her weakness can lie, but that doesn't happen that often to this caliber of player. I think Solar Patrol is probably going to be just fine.
Level 3 for Gaijay, that means it's time to engage. Abduct likely would have meant a dead Meerkat, though beads were waiting on the other end. So really, I guess the big outcome is that Meerkat gets to save his beads. He'll stay alive this time. You have to see a little bit of that, though. I mean, it's easy to kind of reserve yourself when you're playing Khepri, especially against the Yemoja, to just kind of getting poked out and engaged upon. But Lugan found an opening there, just a little bit wide.
Yeah, this is an interesting call-out by Spreed. As we said a lot during Game 1, Stewart not normally a support main, normally an ADC player. So let's leave open Yemoja, who, while being very strong, is not particularly easy. She has a billion decision points throughout the course of a game, and which makes her inherently more difficult, because the more opportunities you have to make a decision, the more opportunities you have to make a wrong decision. And not getting pressure here with this Yemoja pick, I mean, I wonder if this is a Ionic or another support main there who plays a lot of Yemoja, if they do wrest lane control away.
Right.
Stewart's already had to use the beads that he picked up because of the pressure from Blugan and Gaijay. And already this Yemoja, where normally is really there in part to get a great early laning phase and provide a lot of kill pressure and just outright clear pressure, hasn't really been the case so far.
What is the case is now both hunters left alone in lane will be around the same level as one another. So all will be quiet over there for a little while as the supports will make their way over towards the mid lane. It's an aggressive 3v3 here between Mast, Pagon, and Stewart, where Blugan can find maybe an opening here as well. SOT on the up-down. Blugan misses the root. Spreen eats the ultimate from Mast here, but transforms into a Nike. Gets some shielding over there on that side, and instead it's Get a Grip that are being re-engaged upon. Spreen does the final bit of damage, but Haddix is rotating over from solo. It's a stun down onto Blugan. Root goes almost nowhere there, so this will be a kill over towards Get a Grip, and Haddix will net one as well.
But overall, you got to be happy with that if you're Spreed. Great use of that Morrigan transformation. Remember, when Morrigan transforms, she loses debuffs that she had in her initial form, like, say, Divine Retribution from Nemesis, stripping away all those protections. Yes. Mass still has the added procs, but you transform into the Nike, who has not been Nem ulted, and I'm down to fight right away.
That's right.
Really, really heads-up play there by Spreen. A great ultimate from Pagon. I don't think that you can let Spreen step up in your face like that, but I think Mass is overcommitted.
Gaijay had his back stopped, and he took that personally, but Stewart, hanging right around the corner, will stop any more re-engage over here on the left-hand side. So stand at 1-for-1 after some small skirmishing there in the mid. You know, I love this Morrigan pick, I think, because it just adds so much variety to the way some of these team fights can get played out. I mean, obviously, Spreen was transforming into Guan Yu effectively on cooldown there in Game 1, but I think Gore brought up a pretty interesting point. I don't know how often, if ever, we'll see it here this game, but when you have so much viable utility on your team, specifically like a hi-rez or the cavalry charge, and then some on the other team as well, I think Spreen's going to have some tough split-second decisions on what transformation he likes the best in some of these fights.
So it makes playing Morrigan difficult. I mean, you got to find the right tool for the opportunity, and that's going to be on Spreen. But you have it's kind of hard to get a wrong option here. You could probably make an argument for just about anybody in any given situation. I think he's going to be fine. Spreen played quite well on this Morrigan in Game 1. I expect it to continue here in Game 2.
Right, I mean, if all options are good, you know, you're never feeling too bad. Whoa, SOT
Nice.
Gets rezzed out by Blukin there. Either he didn't expect it or didn't see the collapse coming there, but luckily a Scarab's Blessing awaits around the corner, so probably a bit frustrating there for Get a Grip. A kill gets away from them, but now should a fight break out over the next little bit of time, you won't have that big res from Blugan there to kind of save the day. So SOT, we've seen some jungle invading, a little bit of farm trying to be stripped away by this Nike. But I think SOT has probably taken a lot more damage than he figured he'd bargain for over the first few minutes.
Waxing Moon is it's a hell of a drug here, Dave. I mean, that Chang'e ultimate, it slams. It slams early, it slams in the mid game, and it slams late game. There is not a single point where Waxing Moon is a bad ability, and Pagon already putting that on display. Both of the ones that he's used so far have been pretty solid. I mean, you're going to be doing a lot of damage with this, and the fact is that you just get so much instant burst off as a Chang'e. I mean, you can blink Alt-1 a backliner, and that will half-health them in the late game or more, and then they just wait out your Aegis. They 3 to get some movement speed. As you're coming out of it, they hit you with that, they heal themselves, and then they end up wanting you again because they have a lot of CDR, and then what do you do against that? You're just kind of up a creek.
We've definitely seen Chang'e have that ability to immediately burst down squishies, obviously in the back line there. We have also seen, I think, on the flip side, some Chang'es not be able to find the consistent damage output and just sort of fall behind on some of those damage charts as the game goes on. We haven't gotten a great glimpse outside of some poke onto SOT in the early. SOT jumps into the Riptide there, but Stewart wanted nothing to do with it, so he'll have to back away. Have to admire it, though. SOT obviously knows where his strength lies here in this early game, continually kind of poking and prodding at the Get a Grip side of the jungle. Obviously with a little extra shielding, some jump out, or the utility, the rest of the utility that SOT has in its kit, maybe opens the door for a little of that extra early game aggression, unless Get a Grip are able to kind of full-on collapse onto the jungler. Pagon will take some damage here, but no real danger, and he'll back away safely.
I think once SOT finished that Brawler's beat stick, which he just did, that's going to be the opportunity for him to start being a little bit more aggressive. That flat pen becomes so valuable, the extra power doesn't hurt you, but the passive up against the Chang'e and the Yemoja and the Nemesis, and Haddox, who's going Stone of Gaia, it's all going to feel pretty good to anti-heal. So now that SOT has this, he can start to be aggressive. Blink, Alt, Pagon, hope that you can get that damage off before that 2 comes out and the immunity comes out from the Chang'e. And if you can get the 2, or if you can alter before she immunes it, pretty sure she just dies. I don't think even a Waxing Moon would stop you from being able to chase her down. Just doesn't have enough mobility in order to get out of it before he gets speeds.
I'm interested to see how this build kind of progresses for SOT. Obviously, we've seen the way a Nike build will unfold out of the solo lane and the kind of hybrid bruisery nature, or how much damage SOT tries to work into that kit later on. Masto trying to invade on this blue buff. He's taking a good bit of damage here. River's Rebuke will separate out this fight. It's half HP on the solo or troll. He probably wishes he had a bit more in the health and protections department as we stand, and Get a Grip will end up finding a kill and a blue buff in bid. But look at Heat, he's blinked, he's gone right back in. Haddox will ult up and ult right back down onto that Guan Yu. Scarab's Blessing awaits around the corner, comboed with the cavalry charge, and he will stay alive. Pagon on the blink, unable to close the gap.
Yeah, not nearly enough damage there from Pagon, but still a good kill by Get a Grip. Even with all that, I mean, a good Rivers Rebuke, a solid Nemalt right on the right target. Spreed still kind of had to make a mistake. Blugan had his ultimate. Whenever SOT went down, if that ultimate comes out, I think that fight goes a whole lot worse for Get a Grip. It's one of the problems with going Nem into Khepri is that Nem ultimate is single target. We're killing this guy first. We're focus fire right here, and it's kind of just like a big firework and where the Khepri should throw his ultimate. I mean, you see the little Nem ult symbol on your teammate, toss your Scarab's Blessing on him, and you're probably going to do a good amount of work. I wonder if as we go into the mid to late game, Mask is going to do what we see some Nemesis players do against certain compositions, which is blink in, you ult the tank in order to get the protections from them, and then you use the protections and the extra movement speed in order to cut down the backliner elsewhere in the fight. You've got to just use it more for the utility of it and less so for the damage, which is a big ask for a Nemesis to still have enough damage to go through it. I think if I'm Mask, I might go something like auto attack based because I know that my ultimate's going to be less valuable in this game and I'm going to have to get more damage out of the rest of my kit.
And we saw Nem trickling into the meta. That was the conversation, was do you go full-on ability-based, full-on auto-attack-based? Well, if Mast should pivot over towards some auto-attacking, it'll be a bit of a hybrid build to start things off. SOT ushers over towards the blue buff, will help drop that one on the right side of the map as Get a Grip. We're lurking for a small invade there. Lugan might be able to catch one around the corner here, but Pagon able to stay alive, back away beneath that tier 1 tower. Haven't seen much from these 3v3s early on here in this game. Not necessarily for a lack of trying. There was a big skirmish just a moment ago around that blue buff. But between Mast, Pagon, and Stewart, and Blugan, Spreen, and SOT, it's admittedly, aggro, been a kind of a quiet game over here in North America. I'm used to there being 20 kills on the board by now, but these guys are playing the slow game and buying themselves some time.
Definitely showing each other a healthy amount of respect, I would say. That's the way that I'm interpreting the way these two are playing. But both trying to minimize their mistakes and put themselves in optimal positions because both these teams so good at the typical NA brawl style that you don't want to leave it up to chance by taking that type of game. So it doesn't surprise me too much to see this play style go down the way it has so far.
Who do we think's happier with the state of the game right now? I mean, effectively dead even. I don't even think effectively does it justice. Almost literally dead even. I think Get a Grip or Spreed or maybe even both are fine with the pace of this game and don't feel like they've maybe missed opportunities in the early to give themselves an advantage.
I think it's both for sure. They both have team compositions that scale pretty well, that group up well. I mean, you're looking at the healing coming from the Guan Yu for Spreed, and again using Spreen to be this backline diver alongside him with this Morrigan ultimate. But on the other side for Get a Grip, you've got a lot of healing from the Chang'e and the Yemoja at the same time, and Chang'e just doesn't deal enough damage at this point in the game to really put threat on you. Now that Dumorb is done, Pagon will start to chunk a little bit more, but just like last game, he's elected to go for more defense in that third slot instead of bringing more damage to the table, which does concern me a bit.
SOT does his best to try to half-health Stewart. Looked like we finally might see small skirmish there around the Gold Fury. Get a Grip or positioning like they maybe wanted to start it up, but Solo or Troll, who walks in, does about half of the health to Stewart, will keep Get a Grip from re-engaging in that moment. GuyJ may be considering a fight here. He's one level down over Meerkat, but look at the damage pouring on through. GuyJ has to use his shell that he's picked up here. Meerkat will take that as a sign to get out and away. Both Hunters left at half HP. But that shell being gone, big win for Meerkat.
I mean, look, you hit your skill shot, you feel like you should be rewarded for it, but unfortunately for you, you've just sent a Heimdall closer to you and towards melee range, which is where no Hunter wants to see a Heimdall. That is not where you want him, so good decision by Meerkat to dash out, and GuyJ, hoping that there would be a bigger commit, uses the shell, but as we just covered, don't really want to take that fight if you're the Jingwei. So wise call by Meerkat. Small win for him. You take those where you can get them, especially against a guy of Guy's caliber who has really been popping off so far today. Been the typical farm fest over here for the ADC players. Normally they get they get a little bit skirmishy up until this point, but that was basically the only action we've really seen.
You know, look, they've been in fights and getting kills today. They deserve a small mental break, right? I mean, from all of the action that they've seen there, and the weight that they've carried throughout these games. Of course, maybe you just take a game and farm things up over on the left-hand side of the map for a little bit longer. Luckily for GuyJ, the shell coming up in about a minute or so isn't necessarily the end of the world. There are 3 upgraded shells for Spree right now between Spree and Blugan and GuyJ. Might see a fight here. Blugan has abducted Stuart right back in. Oh my, so much damage onto the Emoja. Spreen, he's transformed into the Nike once more. Meerkat has to dash away, uses his ultimate here, and it's a double dash away from Mast as well. Looks like Spree trying to be the aggressors. GuyJ will connect with the ultimate, but Haddix has the beads to avoid the free airfare. Now Spreen on a killing spree, starting to make this Morrigan felt. Haddix is able to turn around some damage in this fight. Free swing and King Arthur never seems like a good idea to me if you're Spreed. 2-for-1 fight and still maybe a Gold Fury on the back end.
And again, it feels like the only reason Get a Grip is in this fight at all is because Blugan mistimed the ultimate once again, put it on himself instead of solo Retrol. That's twice now that SOT has fallen with a Scarab's Blessing, looking him over the shoulder. Gold Fury getting low. Haddix blinks in, looks to keep it going, but the CC chain is solid.
Yeah, right.
Keep getting out of there.
Yeah, right. You have a chance to walk into everything that's free to have here, and Haddix likely frustrated in the way that fight goes. I mean, you get chain CC'd on in there. I suppose if his job was to stop the Gold Fury, he's done that. Reopened the door now for maybe Get a Grip to work in, get a Gold Fury for themselves. Work coverage from Spreed will usher their way back into the Fury Pit. Oracles for Get a Grip will be doing the same. So this will not be stuck away by either team. Tug of war continues. 4 versus 3, 4 versus 4 now. As GuyJ and Spreen will both rejoin the fight. Mast drops his ultimate over onto Heat. The leap in from Solo or Troll has slowed down the Nemesis, and it's done even more than that. It's forced the retreat. Stun from Heat onto Stuart. GuyJ picks up a kill, and now finally, looks like the Gold Fury will be taken away.
Another long fight. Feel like that's been the trend of the weekend so far, is a lot of those. Meerkat, I think, just got his dash caught. No, he still has it. Solo Retrol, I thought might have interrupted it with that too. He's gonna force the Aegis out here from Meerkat at the very least. Don't think he'll be able to get this kill. These fights have been so long because healers have been so heavily prioritized in every region and every level. We're seeing so many of them, and I mean, Pagon building full cooldown. He's able to get a lot of value off of his second ultimate, blinked in. Got both beads from Spreen and GuyJ. You can tell they're on the exact same cooldown because they use them at the same time. But then there's just no more follow-up damage after that in order to actually capitalize on the fact that those beads are down. Spree just grabbed the Gold Fury, reset once again.
SOT, wow, he bought enough time there for his jump to come back off of cooldown. He's 4 levels behind Meerkat, so that's definitely a kill that got away there, but well played by Solo or Troll. Finally, I mean, I say finally, I mean, it's really the biggest gold spike we've seen here so far in this game. Been dead even throughout the first 15 minutes or so. It's a slightly lopsided fight, but really that Gold Fury makes the difference. Massive spike there, right around this 18-minute mark. Guan Yu continues to find some value here in these sets. I think Heed with his ultimate in there just to find that final pick onto Stuart. It's ever so important. It's really what slammed the door shut on Get a Grip.
And look, if you're Get a Grip, if I'm on Get a Grip, I should say, I'm still telling my team to be aggressive. Don't be concerned. That Gold Fury was not the game breaker by any means, though. Meerkat getting soloed, maybe a little bit more of a problem. GuyJ all of a sudden comes back with a full chin size and is happy to take that fight.
So you want to run away here is the question. Stunned into the crystal, but he will take it away. But he left Spreen all on his own here, or is he? Solo or Troll now diving the tier 2 tower. Ultimate drops down in the backline, and SOT has enough damage. Spreen there on the follow-up onto Mast as well. Stuart left retreating on his own. Talk about executed. It looks like for a moment there, at just a glance, if you're ignoring the minimap, that GuyJ just left Spreen out to dry, but it's anything but as Spreen collapse.
rest of the team was on their way, but GuyJ again, the initiator almost for this team with that aggressiveness on Meerkat. Now Blugan has been left alone a little bit to hi-rez, who is level 18 on this Arthur, even though these last few fights have gone Spreed's way. Can't forget about this farmed up Arthur coming from the right-hand side, and hi-rez does it better than just about anybody. I'd really put his Arthur on the Yarkor fine okay level, a Nika of just dominance with this character. I mean, no one wants to play it more than hi-rez, I would say. This dude will slam Arthur game after Arthur game after Arthur game. But I'll be honest, Dave, if I were as good as him at it, I'd probably be doing the same, because winning's kind of fun.
Absolutely, winning does feel good, and that's something Get a Grip haven't felt today. Chance maybe here in game 2 if they're able to turn things around. Remember that 1K gold lead I said spiked up a moment ago? Suddenly it's 5? I mean, this game is now tilted in the complete wrong direction for Get a Grip, where it felt like you had things in your control, but a dive gone right and then a couple towers going down for Spreed, and now a Pyromancer is going to make this a very, very, very tough hill to climb, especially when GuyJ is playing the way he has today. 3-0-3 as we stand on this Heimdall. And then a quiet, what was it, 40,000 damage in game 1 that GuyJ did? A very quiet 40,000 damage. Love watching this guy play, and he's given Spreed a great chance to win.
He's looked hungry ever since coming down here to the SOC. I mean, obviously got a shot at the SPL and had his growing pains there, as any rookie would, but I think the team situation ended up doing GuyJ dirty a little bit, but through no fault, you know, it's just kind of the way of the business, you know, that's kind of what happened. Guy has done what good players do, which is understand that it happens, go down, and just start playing well enough down at this level that no one can deny you.
Big engage from SOT onto a couple of Get a Grip. hi-rez has to leave the fight. That's the opposite of what he wants to be doing on this King Arthur. And look at he dive into the back. Thorns will time out for the Guan Yu, but Pagon left a bit alone. We'll feed the Rampage on over to Spring, and the airstrike from Meerkat will prevent more kills from flowing in to the back pockets of the Order team here. hi-rez is likely tanky enough to survive. We're tower, we're Phoenix diving. 22 minutes in, there's still 2 towers in this lane. But Spreed, unhappy with that, looking for kills, won't find any more other than Pagon. A whole lot of effort for one little mid laner, but Spreed definitely have some map pressure.
Yeah, is healing good, Dave? I kind of
think it might be, right?
After this this SWC Wildcard weekend so far, that has been the story for me, is how important having a healer has been. I mean, Guan Yu is obviously taking the top of that mantle, as Ra's been getting banned a whole lot. But I think as we get closer and closer towards the end of SWC, you know, January, it is going to be critical to have your mid laner be able to put pressure on the enemy team by threatening a Hell or an Aphrodite or a Raw pick that you feel like you can't beat, because you know, we're seeing Phoenix dives in 22 minutes when tier 2 towers are up. One thing enables that, and it's healing.
He has done 7,000 of it. More than, well, not more, exactly the same as Pagon and Stewart combined. So that'll give you an indicator of what this Guan Yu is capable of. Fire Giant falls. So another 3 or so minutes on that one for Spreed. Oni Fury is just going to make this so much more difficult to defend against. And luckily for Spreed, they've already got an open lane to deal with. Should they not want to work on those towers and go straight for the Phoenix like we know they might want to, you just kind of walk down this left-hand lane. But Get a Grip, I mean, they're not going to last long under these towers anyway, so at this point it's kind of Phoenix defense or bust, you feel like, so matter of time and matter of wave management for Spreed to knock down the remaining Phoenix defenders.
And the Phoenix defense for the composition of Get a Grip is not great. You don't have a good wave clearer in order to stop these waves from coming in. That being said, Get a Grip have hit a lot of power spikes since that Fire Giant fight. Soul Reaver done for Pagon, Shin Size done for Mask. Those are going to be big difference makers.
Wow, we are defending this tier 2 tower. Look at the ult in the backline from SOT. It's caught 4 from Get a Grip, and the follow-up is there. Spreen, he'll also transform into the Nike, and now Get a Grip being decimated by Spreed. Pagon and Stewart are both down, but the chase still on. Masked, sidestepping a bit of the damage. He'll survive. Into the fountain he goes, but it's the Titan that's now under the attack from Spreed. Spreed looking to end the game now, send the #1 seed down into the loser's bracket. It's a blink On to Blugan from Mass, but the Titans, what you gotta worry about. Spreed have the damage, they have the numbers, they have the game, and they'll move on. Get a grip sent down with an 0-2.
And the SOC team just dominated the number 1 seed. It wasn't like they eked out a win here today. That was easy, it seemed like, for Spreed. Impressive stuff from them. This Chang'e pick, I mean, like I was saying, it's really popular in ranked these days. It goes blink. You have to get onto the back line. If you're Chang'e hitting a frontliner, you have messed up. And that is the problem, is that your job oftentimes in competitive is to hit who's in front of you. And that's going to be the frontliners. You have to find a way to get onto the back line if you're Pagon, and he just never did in this game. And that's credit to Solo Troll and into Heat and Blugan with the way that they played and how safe Guy J was on that back line in particular made it pretty difficult to do so. But I think that this Get a Grip team clearly needs to go back to the drawing board a little bit, talk about the drafts they want to do, how they want to play in this tournament, because right now they've got a lot of issues. They just are not close to being a team as well-oiled as Spreed.
And to that point, I love the way we've now seen Spreed kind of turn on the Jets here for this weekend, and that some of the downfall, I suppose, from what we've seen in the past on this team is you get a little trolly in some of the games. You know, they start to get out of hand one way or another. Spreed have they've dialed it in here for this weekend, and they look great to continue that momentum moving on forward. It's the 2-0 for Spreed. They'll continue to work their way through the upper bracket. Back to Gore on the desk to break this one down.
And kind of abruptly at that, at 2-0, and they were able to end the second game what felt like it was very fast. I was sitting there thinking, okay, there was even a point Mifflin behind the scenes that said, I blinked, and then there was a 5K gold lead all of a sudden. It felt very even, Alpha Jackal, for a long time, and then it just started to crumble out from underneath them. It all comes down to maybe an overextension from Get a Grip, and then just solid play from there on out for Spreen.
Absolutely, and I think we need to welcome everybody back from the Guy J show after that game. He had a phenomenal performance in the ADC role on Heimdall and just looked nigh on unbeatable. Anyone that came over to his lane knew they were in for a tough time. That was his territory completely, and thankfully we do have some highlights of him here. Just spreading damage out every which way but loose. No one could even get anywhere near him. You see 3 people from Get a Grip right in front of him, and they just back away from the Heimdall who stood in front of the rest of his team.
I mean, between him, Spreen, and everyone on this team had a stellar performance, but, I mean, he just kind of ran it down, right? And does exactly what you expect out of your Hunter to be able to find it. Spreen on the other side, the Morrigan, had a lot of tasteful transformations. Second time in a row, and honestly, I'm going to say, at least in my experience, if someone has a good Morrigan game in the first time, the first time they pull it out, the second game, you probably try to ban Morgan. It's very difficult to fit her in those top 6, considering what we've seen is competitively viable. But definitely helped out Spreen here, having that experience ready.
Absolutely, and like you said, very good choice of transformations. The one that he favored the most, and the one that seemed to work out the most, was this Nike. 2 Nikes are basically impossible to deal with. You have to shred through way too much health with that Sentinel of Zeus ultimate popped on both of them. It was just a nightmare time for Grip, and the Chang'e pick, risky, didn't work out in any sense of the pick whatsoever. I think I saw 1 decent ultimate out of Pig on that game, and the rest of the time it was just, he had to play on the back foot, which is not something you really want to do with Chang'e.
Yeah, not necessarily where you want to be, and as you and Aggro had highlighted, kind of put a lot of that damage. I mean, 10,000 up, most of that going into the front lines there, as you can see. He'd taking a majority of it, 26,000 damage taken for him. You can guess that that didn't quite turn out the way they wanted to. Didn't quite hit that 40,000 mark in Game 2 either, but Guy J, still a nice swift 20,000. We'll round up and give him a few extra. Just a couple of autos in there for Heimdall to make sure he gets that gap. It just feels like they not only knew the draft that they wanted a little bit better with the transformations the Morgan wanted to take, but the team play felt a little bit better. And again, that draft early on had some very, very specific ways of entry, I want to say, on Get a Grip that just never got through. And now they're the team that has to get a grip because they've been knocked down to the lower bracket. They'll be playing against Froggy, as you can see there. Still having to decide the last person to go down into, or the last team, I should say, persons going up against Hugs and Kisses, and that'll be after this next set. But for Get a Grip, now's the time to do what your name implies, double down and buckle up for the losers bracket, where Spreed, I mean, they're sitting comfortably. An SOC team up there in the semifinals very, very comfortably. And honestly, it's a weird position because Winter Dogs versus Mind the Gap, I mean, Alpha Jackal, we could theoretically see 2 SOC teams move forward.
We could very well do so, and I have to say, in that next matchup, I do give a slight edge to Winter Dogs. We saw Mind the Gap earlier against Froggy. It was kind of a comfortable 2-0 for them, but they're coming up against much sterner opposition now, ones that like to play at a much higher tempo, ones with more recognizable names on their roster as well. Yeah. So this is definitely going to be a step up in competition for them, and I'm excited to see just how well they perform.
Yeah, this is one that I think is going to make the rest of the day, well, I guess it's the end of the day, but everything about this set should be pretty competitive. I'm excited to watch it. I'm sure everybody else is as well, but we're going to get set up for that one. We'll be right back with that set right after this.